Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another session of Career Talk with OG. Last week we had my good friend Sal. It was just he and I thought I'd bring more good people, not just one person, but three amazing folks with us to join us today on Career Talk with OG. And today's topic we are going to be talking about how to create some personalized career journeys for students. And when I say students, immediately we probably most of us think of maybe young folks and so forth, but I'm using the word students where, yes, it could be some young folks, it could be adults, just really using creating some personalized journeys across trainings that we do. And so today I have my first guest. My friend is Professor Dietrich von Biedenfeld. Did I get that right, Dietrich? Please.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. And then also we have Mike Liu, who is the co-founder, CEO of FreeFuse, and then also Commander Dale Brown, who is the founder of DUST, Detroit Urban Self-Defense Training. Did I get
Survival
it
training.
right? What was that?
Survival.
Survival
Survival.
training.
Sorry, survival
Detroit
training.
training.
Yeah, it's survival training. And so welcome, folks. Welcome, everyone, to Career Talk with OG.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. And let me let's start off here just with a quick intro for our audience here. Just and Mike, I'm going to start with you. You were the one who actually brought us together. And by the way, just Mike and FreeFuse, our company at Speed Consulting, we are a client of theirs. We use their online platform to power our Aspida's Empowering Scholars programs and other training programs. But Mike, please share with us a little bit about your background or maybe a personal story. Just help folks get to know who Mike is.
Dr.
Yeah,
Mike Liu. Dr.
thank
Mike
you.
Liu.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you know what? Half the time I forget, like I need to put the doctor in front of the in front of the name actually. And I always like to joke that like my parents love that I'm a doctor, just not the part where I'm not a medical one, right? But funny enough, my travels have actually taken me back to the medical realm. So now they're happy to talk to me again. JK. And then my mom and dad would hate hearing me say that. But in any case, it's great to be here. I'm Mike, one of the co-founders and CEO of FreeFuse, and really a lot of what we do is build up these, much more interactive and immersive experiences, whether in the learning and training realm or whether in customer engagement and customer success. The work we do with Aspira Consulting is very exciting because I have always felt in my 6.5 years of being an instructor that there were better ways to assess whether people knew things, right? And I've always felt like if we put folks in the situations more likely to be encountered for the specific subject matter that we are working with, then we'll have much better outcomes in terms of actually learning something and growing as individuals, right? And that's really what kind of has attracted me to a lot of these various programs and folks who have had their own frameworks. And that's why I had the opportunity to connect Dale and Dietrich together a little while back, and there's some really cool opportunities now that have come from that, especially because Dale likes to talk about triads, and I'm not going to steal that from him, but like I thought about triads also in terms of how he was talking about the different sorts of folks that he wanted to work with. And so there are obviously people who he wanted to work with in terms of the medical space. There were psychologists, and there were folks in legal. And obviously working with Dietrich, I was like, you guys should meet. I thought that there would be a good opportunity to connect the two of them. And so obviously both of them having their material, of course, on FreeFuse as well, and really bringing in that sort of capability to assess situations in a much more scenario-based way, while also still providing learning pathways and really providing sort of a new age opportunity to know how to assess threats as part of the whole paradigm of preventative threat management. So
Yeah.
You know, I really had the great pleasure of working with both of them. It's been a fantastic journey so far, and you know, there's some cool things in terms of all sorts of stuff. We even just recently talked to some folks who do drone things, right? And so, you know, it's been cool to kind of see all of that sort of come under one, you know, kind of collective group, if you will. And you know, it's a very you know, sort of interesting journey that's also taken as well. So hopefully I've lobbed it up for you know, either one of Dietrich or Dale to, you know, kind of like take it from there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mike. And by the way, Mike, a little side is do you mind lowering your camera down a little bit so we can see your beautiful face completely? There. Oh my God, look at that. You guys okay? I just saw the viewer count go up, Mike. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Doc,
He's still blocked. He's still blocked.
Yeah, yeah, you still blocked.
Doctor, you're still blocked.
Yeah, yeah. But Commander Dale Brown, you are up next. And by the way, everyone, you need to go to his YouTube channel. He is a superstar on social media. He's gone viral, has a ton of followers. And when you look at his videos, you're going to see why he's so popular. So it truly is an honor to have you here, Commander Dale Brown.
Thank you.
Please share with us a little bit more about yourself or anything that you'd like our audience to know about you.
Yeah, well, you know, again, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. And Dr. Mike Liu, great guy, brought us together. You know, our program is totally different than any other, the educational piece, and then also the way FreeFuse brings it together with Dietrich and I, with our two expertise, having the law side of the house and the tactical side of the house coming together to help people have a better quality of life. And that's the thing to get across, is that our training system is specifically designed to help people have a better life, non-violence, to find a way to create non-adversarial interactions, right, in order to create nonviolent outcomes by design. And we've had 30 years to develop this training system through real world application, which is much different than the other system. It's actually been proven. So now we have the empirical results that we need in order to take it to market. So glad that we can do that, and look for all the opportunities that we can have to get the word out there so people know there's real ways they can learn to protect themselves, their families, create a better quality of life, and have a more successful life as a result.
Amen to that. Amen. Thank you, Commander Brown. Thank you. Appreciate it. And my friend Dietrich, you and Commander Brown here mentioned it, okay, but you obviously have a legal background, and you know, as I've gotten to know you and understand, I have a feeling you're the one who keeps Commander Brown here, you know, in line here with this training. So please share with us a little bit about your background story.
Well, I'm the youngest of four, and actually Commander Brown reminds me tremendously of my older brother, who has just a brilliant mind and a creative spirit. And sometimes you just have to say, but here's the structure. So we're back to the structure of what we're doing, because his knowledge, just like Dr. Liu's, is so expansive. He could go on for 3 hours, and you say, but they only paid for an hour, so we gotta cut it down.
10 hours.
There's the Louisiana saying, lagniappe, and you know, lagniappe's a little something extra, so we don't want to give them 10 hours of free content, right? But but no, I'm a professor at the University of Houston downtown, and also doing an interim role as the chief procurement officer at the Houston Community College System, which is one of the top 5 largest community college systems in the U.S. Somewhere, you know, between 70 and 100,000 students, 64 facilities, $500 million, but 100 you know, million in expenditures on goods, a couple $100 million on services, and we kind of keep that in line. But in my professor role, I think especially tied to your work, and I love that you're OG, because my paternal grandfather Ovinus Grogan gave me some cufflinks, so I get to walk around being an OG myself sometimes.
Love it.
Right? You know, one of the things that we really focus on is the distinct pathways of the students, and making sure they understand that context is key, not only their demographic, but their geography, their socioeconomics, even their mentorship and ability to get that support from externally. And so in the classroom, you know, I love focusing on things like reminding my 18-year-old students, in Texas at least, you could run for justice of the peace, which is in most counties a 6-figure position, and you only have to have lived in that area for 6 months. So no law degree required, no college education required. And so a lot of those things open my students' eyes. Wait a second, I'm 18, I could be making 6 figures, and I don't even need to be a lawyer to be a judge. Yes, you could do that.
Wow.
Right, right. So
Yes.
there are a number of different opportunities exposing the students to different social organizations like Rotary International, Lions Club, and a host of other sort of outreach areas where if you don't have the FreeFuse connection that can draw you together with Dr. Liu and Commander Brown and now you, Oscar, to build those connections, where do you start? And so
Yes.
a lot of these organizations, the Houston's Livestock Show and Rodeo, they have student groups that can start you out in middle or high school at least
Yeah.
prior to vocational or college journey into a career to build that mentorship, which we continue to
Looks
see
like that.
validated economically, but also connect you with like-minded individuals and opportunities for scholarships and other areas that can help fund or offset any different abilities or inabilities that you might have financially, socially, or transportationally even, getting to a campus for welding training or English class or whatever.
Yes.
So really, really exposing students to that. So again, it's been great being part of this group and being able to share that, and then also witness the different ways that both Dr. Liu and Commander Brown bring their own pedagogy and andragogy into the environment, their teaching styles to present their expertise to different learners in different scenarios. The
Yes.
5'2" person, when I flew up to Michigan and met with Commander Brown at his facility, the 5'2" person, 100 pounds, has a slightly different survivability tactic than maybe somebody me at 6'2". And I'm gonna say my target weight of 220. I'm not gonna tell you what the scale said this morning.
Oh my gosh! I thank you for sharing, because your comments, especially about you mentioned distinct pathways and in sharing with students different career options, right, and opportunities, ties in nicely here to the topic here that we're talking about, because I think so during the height of the pandemic, when a lot of the educations and trainings, we went online, I would hear things such as like that people were tired of Zoom, and I'm like, no, they're not. What they're tired of boring teachers, trainers, people that are just using a cookie cutter approach across the board for everyone, and not taking into account the students' individual style of learning, or maybe they love Commander Brown's his style, and others will like Mike or yours or mine or whatever, right? And so Mike, talk to us about, let's start here with FreeFuse, the platform, and the premise behind it of creating these personalized pathways, right, or learning pathways for folks. Talk to us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Absolutely. And I think that in anything creative that I like to do, I like to be as exhaustive as possible with possibilities, right? And what I like to first start with in any type of exploration process is providing as much information that I feel like could all be tied together. Before I actually started using any of these softwares, one of the things that I, kind of did was a mind map. I would go ahead and utilize Miro, for example, these days, but basically putting out what is connected to everything else. And what I kind of provided as sort of my own insight was the idea that the structure of information and the flow of information was just as important, of course, as the content, right? And being able to provide a way for folks to explore it themselves was the way to actually develop a sense of buy-in, right? What I
Mhm.
didn't really factor in, though, as we started to release our first pilot program around the idea of improving the engagement of students, with the content we were putting out at A&M, right? Because that's where I was doing my teaching assistant work. One of the first things that I noticed was there was a lot of engagement that was already happening on the content. We could measure what paths people went down. We could measure how long it took people to actually go through the content. We were measuring how often people would go back to certain sections because they really appreciated, having kind of like the bird's eye view. And then, of course, being able to go and search for those key terms, right? What I didn't factor in, though, was that there were a number of folks who obviously used it so much that they also felt like they didn't really need to come to the course itself, right? And so we kind of had to consolidate that to some degree. So we learned from that the next time. But basically the whole idea was that if you give people these pathways and allow them to start anytime, anywhere that they feel like they're proficient in, you have a higher opportunity to actually get them to consume more of it, because they actually feel like they're actually not just starting from ground zero where everybody else is. And I've always looked at this as kind of like two different, philosophies, which are the broadcast format, which has served us, since the days of the Roman Empire, right? Or since the days of early storytellers and, Babylonia or things like that, right? You talk to a group of people and you hope that that message gets broadcast as far and as wide as possible, because we didn't have the technology advancements we have today. But as everybody probably knows, we have AI now, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, everything can be atomically personalized. Now, how pragmatic is that, right? Maybe perhaps it's not exactly pragmatic to give somebody, a completely different journey to buying a handbag than it is from a person A to person B. Learning is different, in my personal opinion. Learning is one of those things that everybody kind of has their own, sort of flavor and flow. Some subjects for certain people are good in collaboration. Other subjects for certain folks are really good when you can get, kind of your own personal, I can grind this out. It's a kind of, this sort of side project that I'm doing. And it really just depends on the circumstances and how you want to do it. So rather than kind of providing one, kind of distribution that everybody experiences, giving them pathways actually allows them to feel like they own the experience. And
Mm-hmm.
that was really the philosophy behind it. And I've always felt like if you can get people to take ownership of their learning and of that experience, then you're going to have better outcomes. And,
Yes.
from the data that we got that semester, there were a lot of great outcomes. We had a number of students who, after the pandemic, were very much struggling. And then the next year, we had a bunch of students, pretty much all of them, none of them got below a C, basically. Now, of course, some folks dropped, is obviously the caveat, but the final grades were pretty much everything C's and above, right? And so,
Yes.
it was very impressive to see that, and the fact that students like verbally told people that they wanted it in all of their classes. That was also really encouraging as well. And so that really gave me the confidence to say we can bring this to a number of different places and formats. And it's been cool to see the type of innovation that has happened since then. And so,
Right.
obviously you've seen it yourself in the programs we've been able to cultivate.
Yes, 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 yes. No, definitely. We've seen it here. And, Commander Van, let's spin on what Mike mentioned. Help us understand from your standpoint, the training that you do, why is personalized trainings important in the work that you do?
Because personalized training means that you're able to pick and choose what's interesting to you, what's
Mm-hmm.
of interest, and so you're automatically going to maintain and retain an audience that's going to actually care because they're so personally interested, invested in things that they're actually studying. And I think it's
Yes.
a great format because it engages you psychologically. You have the ability to look for what's interesting to you, and then as you go through it and you learn and you're asking questions, answering questions, you're learning in a format that is interesting and engaging, keeping your mind engaged in constant activity versus other types of learning such as just non-experience based, so looking at something and just simply reading, and it's just sitting there. It's not actually questions, it's not answers, it's not, there's nothing that makes the brain engage, definitely, right? And
Yes.
that is the difference between this kind of training and then the other, is that you're creating a learning tree that actually makes the brain keep engaging and wanting those endorphins released and keep having a rewards based psychological experience, which is going to keep them from disengaging and
Yes.
also help them with retention, long-term
Yes.
retention, and reduce rate of decay.
Yes. 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 And
Yeah,
thank you. And that, yes, Mike.
sorry. Let me add a little bit of context there as well. So how we built out that first sort of choice interactive journey experience with the folks that at NOC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Working with Dale, that was one of the first times we ever really truly innovated, right? So what actually happened was and of course, the type of work, and folks have not seen it before. The Detroit Urban Survival Team, right? They will come in, or the training team will come in and they will go and, teach you about, the principles around preventative threat management. And one of the things that, I always felt like was being able to experience something in a way that, would allow you to fail without consequence will obviously give you the reps in order to do things properly, right? And so one of the first things that we did was actually handling, somebody who, of course, is, in your space causing a dangerous situation, right? And a lot of what I appreciate about the preventative threat management principles are around the idea that you really can stop, these certain, things from happening, or even putting yourself in those situations, which I think is actually a large part of threat management, right? But of course, then there are the tactics that, of course, keep you safe should you be in said situation, right? And
Yes.
so for me, it's of the utmost importance to be able to practice a situation so that you don't feel danger, and you
Yes.
don't feel, you don't feel like you're, in a situation where you freeze up and you have no idea what to do. I think it's important to get those reps. And so, we designed out scenarios around that particular subject. What do you do in this particular scenario? And then we started stacking a couple of them together, and it was actually the ideas there that allowed us to craft the experience that actually would go into NOC, what worked and what didn't, what folks gave us
Yes.
feedback on. And so, I kind of like to say that, all of these experiences have contributed to each other, and that's cool.
Yes, yes, yes. And I want to come back here in a minute to some of the things about how you did that, Mike, right? But Dietrich, I want to come to you because you, I mean, obviously you have different roles. You share different responsibilities, the different things that you do. But I want to, my question to you here, I want you to put on your professor hat. So you're in the classroom teaching students, and share with us, when you look at how teaching has evolved over the years and today, right, with AI and these tools, share with us, what is it that you're doing, or what do you, to incorporate what I call the high touch, meaning the face to face, the students in the classroom, and then the high tech, using the technology, maybe like FreeFuse or AI or other technology, to be able to further personalize that learning experience for the student and make it engaging.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things, so, people say, what are you doing over at the community college in this chief procurement officer role? I work with a lot of people who either never had a real job, right? Undergrad, master's, PhD, or they haven't had a real job in 30 years. And I thought, gosh, I don't want to be the person who's quoting page 37, and page 37 isn't relevant. And so a lot like Commander Brown's technique, you know what preventative threat management includes? Situational awareness. And so the same situational awareness I ask for my students, we spoke a little bit before we got on, Oscar, about understanding the environment, right? Students who have to understand, just anecdotally, how did I get a job at the State Department when I was in my 20s? Well, Ambassador Charles Ray was a military officer in Vietnam. My father was a non-commissioned officer in Vietnam. You got to know somebody. I took some students on a study abroad trip to the consulate in Sydney, Australia, and they learned about an opportunity for a paid internship in Australia that isn't advertised with the State Department, right? How cool to have that on your resume, but you must be present to win. But how do you get present with a $2,000 ticket to a foreign country, 21-hour flight, and then access to even know what is a consulate general versus an embassy? Everybody knows what an embassy is, but what's a consulate general? So that sort of awareness. So I approach my teaching with that understanding that everybody's in a different environment. And so I try to tier my technology. So kind of in response to your question, I usually use some sort of rudimentary introductory group discussion to allow the students to tell me where they want to be. Because again, just like the physics of maybe a preventative threat technique that involves different height or weight, or even ages, right? Maybe your vision isn't as good, or hearing isn't as good. So how do you detect a threat and avoid it?
Yes.
In the same way, I've got to say, maybe I've got a student who isn't going to have the same socioeconomic resources to have Wi-Fi at 24/7. So I sort of tier it. And once I get to know where they want to be and get to know kind of where they are, then I can plot that chart. Right. And I always use the analogy with my students. Yeah, you can plug in a destination in GPS, but maybe you don't have a toll tag. So you need to avoid tollways. Maybe you're a broke student and you haven't had your oil changed in a while, and you don't want to drive over 55. So you want to use frontage roads or feeder roads, not the highway. Right. So understanding that. And then one of the things since I've started working with FreeFuse, I was anti-technology in a lot of ways because it had to be my original work product, right? We are very much anti-plagiarism. We're very much
Yes.
individual thought and ideas. And so, you would see me at my desk at midnight. And of course, all the older professors are like, we work 2 days a week. What are you doing here at midnight? Just throw the papers in the air, and the ones that land on the top stair, you give an A, and the ones that land on the bottom stair, you give a B, and go home.
So that's how grading works. Now
right.
we know everyone the secret.
Insider information, it helps, right? But I was so intense. And so since working with FreeFuse, I've not only really appreciated the idea that I can choose my own adventure, right? There's students who want to do a career in procurement for hospitals are going to have very different expectations than those who do it for, say, a school system, because
Yes.
the idea of getting an organ transplant somewhere involves helicopters, liability, timelines. And you know what? If the textbook shows up a week late, again, another professor's secret, we're working on our syllabus the day of the first class, right? It'll be
Yes.
fine if your textbook comes a week late. But if that organ comes 3 hours late, it may not be transplantable. So
Yeah.
learning, hey, if you want a career in health professions versus a career in education or postal procurement or even rail logistics, heavy goods, but much slower than air freight, I can build those pathways. And now I'm able to use AI in part to help me come up with creative prompts. So I still come up with a lot of my own original work product, but with Dr. Liu, I've been able to say, okay, let me cede some of this control and not spend 3 hours coming up with my own lens on the world, my own limited view of I can only experience, or sort of outline the experiences that I've had, the vision that I have. AI opens up a door for me to say, here's the title that I'm thinking of. Give me 3 different titles that will be engaging to a Gen Z student. Give me 3 titles that will be engaging to a student who has told me in their initial group, discussion and introduction, I don't learn well visually.
Yes.
I need audio things like, oh, well, so what audio, AI helped me out here. And it has. So again, I've got some of those very low-tech solutions, but I've really started to build in for maximization of time, right? As a business professor, I should be looking at my ROI. Of course, again, real world versus the ivory tower. I've got all day to look at things, right? As opposed to business where you're like, get it done because that's what they're paying you for in this timeline. And so I've been able to maximize my time using these tools, and then sort of build these choose your own adventure settings where individuals are able to look again at their own sort of introspectively look and say, okay, situational awareness, is it going to take me longer to get to this place because I don't know someone at Shell or Chevron or BP or one of these big oil and gas companies? I don't know someone at Boeing or Airbus. I don't know someone. So maybe I have to work a little bit longer game to get to that C-suite job that I dream of, right? So again, sort of balancing those things. But I've really started to incorporate more of the AI and really try to allow it to guide some of my originally creative. I've got a dystopian vampire universe problem that I created, and then I gave it to AI, and I came up with 3 iterations. So now I've got something without using an inordinate amount of time that I can give to 3 different groups in the class, break them out, and then when they come back, they're not talking over each other with completely different scenarios, but they're different enough for the environment to be engaging. And that way, even if it's an online environment, right, where I put them in breakout groups on the Teams or Zoom or whatever digital tool we're using, then when they come back to the shared environment, they're engaged, they're participating, and they're active, as opposed to Sage on the stage where I just talk at you about what I think is interesting, which I assure you, they do not find interesting.
Yes. Everyone, those of you that are in academia, teaching, rewind Dietrich's points here because he just dropped some incredible, very valuable, very practical path that he takes to maintain the authenticity, obviously, and as you mentioned, not plagiarizing, right, someone else's work, but being able to maintain his work, the quality of his work, of his teaching, and utilizing tools, in this case AI. So golden. Thank you, Dietrich. I love it.
Well, that's actually why I actually think that in the age of AI, the power of the subject matter expert is going to grow. Now, I actually think there are different kinds of subject matter experts, right? You have your folks like, Dale, for example, who have their own frameworks and have their own, areas of expertise. And that will not go away, but instead I actually think that these folks will have certain roles in terms of determining whether the output of an LLM is accurate, right? And I kind of call them, they're sort of the arbiters of truth, if you will, right? Now, I think there's actually a few new roles, though, that if you are in a particular subject, you should be able to also find a role here. Now, I have another term that I've called the curator. Now, the curator still has to be in said subject matter because you have to know enough to know how to piece things together, right? But their whole function is to be able to put together what right frameworks for the group of people that they're working with are going to be appropriate, right? Now, I originally only had two in my model for this, but I did actually come across a third one when someone pointed this out about some of the work that we do, right? Where, essentially I have a third role called the compiler. And I call it that because of computer speak, right? But they're essentially somebody who leverages a way to, take some of those frameworks or some of those ideas and mix them together into a technology that can be usable, right? Because now with the idea of being able to take what's in your head and put it into a tool a la a custom GPT, for example, right? You're able to take your expertise and now turn it into a tangible digital object, but something that you can interface with, like an actual real thing, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that we did actually, with the folks at Dust, we actually created one of those custom GPTs. And the way it's architected, I have the most fun with this, right? So one of the things that I put in there was the idea that you can actually take a situation that someone is experiencing and determine the level of threat and level of survivability to some degree, right? And of course, like I kind of went off of like a number of like the source material that we could get from online, but you can actually literally tell it, I am experiencing XYZ thing. Like, what is the level of threat to my survivability? Or, I forget what the exact wording is. And also, Dietrich's also has some programmed stuff in there. So whenever you ask for legal advice, because you can obviously have different laws in different states. So, for example, if you were going to ask, Professor Dietrich, I am wondering, is such and such state a stand your ground state, right? And of course, that's very important because, obviously, if you do certain things and, you're beholden to the law, and if you break the law, you will go to jail no matter what, that situation is. And a lot of people don't understand, I think the word is proportionate force, right? And so, it can be rather incarcerative to actually go and possibly, have that in proportionate force. And so to me, taking the frameworks and making it a tangible object to actually be shared as a companion guide is actually really, really important. And that's actually the suite of tools that, Dietrich and Dale have also, devised in terms of the programs that they're working with in terms of like the education folks and, people in K through 12, higher ed and all of that.
Yes. Well, so having what you said, all of you here, gentlemen, let's help people that are listening or watching us right now. Maybe those that are design courses or do trainings, career readiness training, etc., career counselors, professors. Can we take an actual scenario or an example and just from a very practical standpoint walk someone what are the steps that they need to do in order to be able to create these personalized career scenarios, both approaching it from again that high tech and the technology tools. So I don't, Mike, do you want to kick it off and then we can just kind of go around and each of you gentlemen chime in and sort of like, I almost see it like a 440 relay, You take, okay, yeah.
Well, I think it's actually almost like a very nice sort of collaborative opportunity to think through this. Now, if there's anybody who probably knows the most about a situation that can possibly happen, it's probably Dale. So what I think would be great is to, almost outline some of maybe one of the situations you might have, dealt with previously, and then we can actually talk about how we want to construct a pathway around this, right? And so,
yes, that'd be good.
So Dale, what were maybe give a situation or a scenario that you've come across recently that folks would really benefit from having a learning pathway for them to easily access?
Well, the learning pathway helps you process things in a logical way that removes feelings and replaces it with the understanding of the facts you're going to need to determine your courses of action.
Mm.
And normally we use feelings, and then we hope that the judge, jury, prosecutors, police that came to the scene, the first responders wrote the report down, the witnesses, we hope that they all feel the same things we're feeling, or else we'll find that our actions were incarcerative. Use the word again.
Mhm.
Yep.
I got it. See that flow? I got it in there. That's the thing is good for you get to use words like learn words like incarcerative. Where else are you gonna learn that? You can learn it here.
Yeah. You learn that from a lawyer,
Under
right?
positive conditions. You don't want to hear incarcerative. You don't want to hear anything about incarcerative behavior from your attorney. So you'll learn it here, and you'll be happy about it. And it'll deter you from ever doing things that are not in your best interest of freedom and financial success. So that's where I think that this streamlines the process. The Chat GPT, the whole framework is really about how do we get a person to have a higher level of understanding during their time of need in a way they can either take the course ahead of time and have that in their understanding, or immediately people look it up, have the information flowing to you right now to make the best decisions. A lot of things, believe it or not, you can change the course of actions if you just had a tutor right there to help you make some really important decisions, like don't say anything or say something right now or say this, but remember to think of it this way. This can be very important for the total quality of your life for you and your family. It's that serious. The subject matter and then the way that we present it by putting law into the training system that you're learning. That's why we call this the bridge as well. The training system itself is called the bridge. So we have problems in life, dealing with all kinds of threats, whether it's threat from road rage or a threat at school and the college campus, or threats in a workplace from different types of workplace violence perpetrators. What is the solution? How do we create a non-adversarial interaction for nonviolent outcomes by design and teach that to mass audience? How do we teach it to students, to teachers, to visitors, people that work at a plant, people that are just regular people that want no violence in their life or want to mitigate it the best way they can, right? And that's really about, that's what this training system is about, what the education is about, and the system by which you can learn it. It's the bridge, right?
Yes.
It is the way to get the knowledge to the people that need it in a package that is deliverable and practical, and is designed for you learning. So it's not like you're learning from your own research. We did the research, brought it forward. We did the actual intellectual research, the physical research. You're getting expertise, and you're getting expertise in a format that is easy to learn, and again, designed for rapid assimilation.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And
then,
I would say, oh, sorry, and just to add on to that, right? So, like, let's say, for example, if we had, one of the first examples of us building this out was home break-in, right? Now, someone breaks into your house, right? Obviously, you want to feel like you need to take action, or you see someone doing it. If anybody has seen some stuff on social media, there's also people who like to film everything and stand near the door when someone breaks into your house. And I don't know how immediately valuable that is, right? I don't know if that increases your survivability. That definitely increases whatever culpability and perhaps legal items that you have to handle. So we at least have that checked. But I think that in that scenario, we want to build trust in the institution of the actual, sort of, the learning path and the flow, right? So there are a number of things that, we wanted to do with the GPT itself that, I've been able to accomplish with a number of other builds. A lot of the times when you get a step-by-step instruction, whether you're talking, searching something on Google or whether you're doing something like ChatGPT app on your phone, a lot of people don't actually know what to do, right? They don't know what that looks like. So one of the things that we're actually building out is the capability to now not just return links to video content, but to kind of have a shareable thing for folks to be able to use as kind of like a pocket guide, right? And so, that's something that we'll be providing through our technology. But when you think about how does someone figure out that scenario, you have to imagine who's actually, kind of the players here, right? You obviously have your individual who's breaking into the home, and you have the folks who obviously have to go in and figure out what to do, right? And you always have to think about context. In this scenario, you probably have somebody who's level of panic and level of anxiety has probably hit all-time highs, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you give them very quick, very simple, actionable results, right? So one of the things that, I had architected is, if there was anything that was immediate danger, right? If you were to ask that chat, for example, if we talk about something that's like very heavily and immediately dangerous, you're going to have much simpler instructions, right? Now, if you're learning in kind of like a controlled environment and you're running through maybe like a few of those simulations, that's, you don't necessarily need to have like short sentences of do this immediately, right? Like go outside, do this, right? Go record this, or, go see if you have this. Like those should be very simple, because most of the time in such a scenario, people don't have really good comprehension of reading. So making everything very simple in terms of response is very important, right? So when we think about a learning path there, in some cases, we have to think about the situation where somebody has prepared, they are ready, and they would obviously have done the program beforehand, so we wouldn't have that much panic. But we also have to take into consideration that there are some folks who haven't done that, and they are using this for the very first time, perhaps, or they are using it in a dangerous scenario for the very first time. And you have to basically, kind of take into account all of those factors, right? And I'd rather take the baseline of the person who has never seen it before as kind of like, the way to really, administer as best of directions as possible, because more than likely in this case, somebody who has the time and the wherewithal to have done it beforehand, will obviously be looking at this information and specifying it in such a way where it can be seen that these people are not in any danger, right? If we have something where, folks are obviously, typing stuff about immediate danger and providing, minute to minute information around the actual situation at hand, that's easy to take into account. And of course, we can obviously put those types of triggers into the actual GPT if necessary, right?
Yeah.
So I think that when you think about constructing something like this, you always need to think about the actual audience and how do you get them from A to Z, right? How do you get them from I'm in danger to I feel safe? And in order to do that, you need to provide the adequate information and the right knowledge, but most importantly, at the right time. And so that's really kind of like this idea around this just-in-time system, because if there's even the littlest bit of information that can push your survivability from maybe to assured, I want to take that step.
Yep. No, and I'll come back to how FreeFuse does this here, Mike. But Dietrich, based on what Commander Brown said, and sort of the scenarios, et cetera, and so forth, what would be the next step in incorporating or coming to us, obviously from your role, your perspective, maybe from the legal aspect, or what would be the next step here in terms of creating these personalized scenarios?
Right, and this is an area where, again, some of these even simpler AI tools that you can get for free online could assist you in organizing information, right? Because sometimes our facts and our emotions are different, as Commander Brown said. And so you may feel very unsafe, but it turns out that Iowa has a very small rate of gun death, but a higher property crime rate, perhaps. And so in developing your awareness of these scenarios, you can actually use the AI to collect a large amount of information about the 50 states and then organize it in a rank order of probability of death by gunfire, probability of death by car accident, probability of harm or physical loss through burglary, mugging, or some other harm. And once you've organized it, but that way you can address that probability severity matrix to create a pathway that really focuses on what's most relevant to the environment of the person. It depends, because context is key. And the context of the individual, again, even if they feel very safe, they may not realize the amount of property crime that's in their area, right? Well, you may feel safe, but there are a lot of carjackings, and it's 2 seconds between a carjacking and a car shooting if you're not prepared. So those sorts of ideas of drawing on those scenarios that Commander Brown's presented, again, and of course, FreeFuse with Dr. Liu that plugs it in, but we draw on those to create a learning plan that really resonates with the students and sometimes has a conversation with them, right? You might poll the students using, again, there are a number of digital tools now that you could use, either if they're They've got clickers if they're in an in-person environment, and then of course they've got various polling systems. If they're online, you send a link, and they fill it out, and then you have a dialogue.
Yes.
Everybody in this class thinks they're at risk of death from a nuclear weapon. Guess what, kids? That's not it, right? All of you are in a high sugar environment. Diabetes is your killer, so don't worry about that, right? So those sorts of things, and
car accidents.
Right, yeah, and then you can engage them that way with practical information. But I think we add levity to it sometimes in the class, where I'm asking the students, why are you worried about someone stealing your Rolex? Everyone in here has a Timex. What is the scenario you're creating in your head, right? And of course, the young people have the memes now about, of course, in the dating scene, right? Oh, they're only after me for my money. What money? What house? What car? So really bringing the students back to reality to bring them something that's not only valuable for them in their current scenario and where they want to be, but also with a little bit of levity and introspection, where they get to step back and say, you know what, actually, I am being a little ridiculous, and that draws them in.
Yes. I love that. Rolex versus Timex. But Mike, I want to finish it with you. We have a few minutes here before we come up to the hour here, the end of things. But tell us, how does your platform, FreeFuse platform, then take what Commander Brown does, the scenarios, what Dietrich here just described? How does the FreeFuse platform further help someone create these personalized, these tailored learning scenarios?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, funny enough, we're actually in the process of making it even easier, right? And so a lot of what we're really focused on right now is the idea that you can actually take whatever pathways that you have right now, and you can also feed that that information and flow of information as data, and soon enough visually too, which will feed some of our Gen AI video offerings, text to video, right? We'll be able to actually take that as the sort of like the base information, and then put it up as like the next round of videos. But the way I always like to look at any kind of pathway is that we want to look at how it is that someone needs to explore information, and what are all the various ways that we can actually kind of branch out from each of those individual segments of information. And I like to look at it in such a way where if there are sort of areas where folks seem to diverge, let's say in terms of their knowledge, like one of the good examples of this is in college classes you have some people who have taken some classes and they're way better prepared for that specific course than other people who might have taken some other classes, and now they're in the same course, right? So some people will have the proficiency of knowing that prior course that built them up in order to learn this subject, right? It's a very common thing, like in engineering, for example, right? You might take something in chemistry, and that would lead into you being good at something in environmental sciences, for example, whereas somebody might have taken mostly mechanical engineering classes, and then you end up in that environmental science class, you don't have that chemical engineering class, and now you kind of have to allow some folks to be able to catch up, right? So what I like to kind of look at the idea of pathways, I like to kind of mentally look at it as what types of information did my audience start with, and then what types of information do I need to make sure that they all have at the end of the day, right? And so I wanted to always sort of supply those pieces of information as best as I could, but I wanted to give folks more of like an opportunity to see you don't necessarily have to go down this track if you don't think it's interesting, right? It's almost like most of the time when people go and review back in content from a college course, you get a nice little Zoom video, or in some cases they have timestamps, and you might try to just parse out what it is that's relevant to you, and by that point most of the people who are students want to kind of churn out and not look at that, right? So for me, I think it starts with the philosophy around who is it you're trying to go ahead and communicate your information to. What information did they come into this before coming across this course or coming across this content, and what do they need to make sure that they have when they leave out the door? What are those outcomes that we want to create, right? And so what I like to do is develop out those pathways and figure out at what point does the path diverge? At what point do we need to give more information to a certain group of people because they need to catch up? And at what point do I need to go and provide folks an opportunity to explore further material, because they're not going to be engaged if they think they know everything, right? So, being able to actually give them different paths to explore also gives them the opportunity to feel like their time is well worth the actual study of the material through the exploration, right? And so that's why I think it's all of, when we talk about so many different things, even look at the word career, the term career path, right? The path that you take, is going to be unique to every single person, right? And so what we want to do is try and at least facilitate as best as possible a feeling that everyone's journey is unique. And the more that you can actually place in those areas of sort of unique, sort of different pieces of information that are going to be for maybe different audiences, or in the case of what we're even planning to do in the future with AI, like making it even individually relevant to the point of like how it actually is communicating the information and utilizing the tree structure just as an overall structure and flow of information and using AI to transform it from there. That's kind of where we're going. But the overall idea is that we can make things atomically relevant. But I think to start off with, it's good to know what journeys people are generally taking. And that's when you can allow it to have even more complexity over time. So that's kind of my structure and process. You start with the idea, you start with the paths you want people to go down, and then you figure out how to make those experiences converge and diverge as best as you possibly can. And I think that as best practice, you actually create exercises and opportunities for growth beyond just viewing content and consuming content that will confer to their proficiency wherever they are at in that point in time. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I think about it.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you so much. We're coming up here to the hour here. Thank you for joining me today on Career Talk with OG and sharing more about, again, how to create these tailored, personalized career scenarios so that it's more engaging, more relevant to folks, and ultimately too as well be able to provide them with much better learning experience, right? And I appreciate all of your insights, your wisdom, and so forth. And so, everyone, thank you again for joining us. Career Talk, yeah, with OG. We will be back, gentlemen. Again, thank you very much for being on the show today. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.